Welcome to Families in Faith. This week we are looking at the story of Isaac and his boys. Remember that Isaac's parents, Abraham and Sarah, were quite old when they had Isaac. His mother Sarah had passed away, and before Abraham died, he had his servant make a covenant to find Isaac a wife from his people, not from the Canaanites. So the servant goes and finds Isaac Rebekah to be his wife. Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. The two had difficulty getting pregnant, so they turned to the Lord in prayer. And God heard their prayer, and Rebekah became pregnant with twins. The twins were quite active in Rebekah's womb, so she prayed to God asking what was going on with these babies. God's answer became a prophecy for what would happen with these two boys. He said in Genesis 25, verse 23, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One will become stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." The twins were born and named for their appearance and delivery. Esau was red and hairy, and Jacob was grabbing the heel of his brother. As they grew, their parents developed favoritism. Isaac loved Esau because he was a hunter and cooked delicious meals, and Rebekah loved Jacob. To fulfill God's prophecy, there are two stories that show the younger brother Jacob taking rights and power from the older brother Esau. The first, Jacob takes advantage of Esau. When Esau comes in the house after hunting all day, he is famished and asks for some food. Jacob tells him he can have food in return for his birthright. The birthright of the firstborn was the inheritance from the father, not like today where a will and trust distributes your possessions evenly between your kids or wherever you choose. In those days, everything came down to birth order, and the firstborn male got the best. The second story that cements the prophecy is when Jacob, with the help of his mother, tricked Isaac into giving the blessing reserved for the firstborn son to him. In those days, the deathbed blessing was a binding contract. It could not be undone. The blessing is tied closely to the birthright. Both deal with the inheritance that usually went to the firstborn son. Esau tried to separate the two by getting the blessing, but Jacob had already taken his inheritance when he took his birthright. The blessing on Isaac's deathbed just sealed the deal. The younger son would now rule the older. This, of course, led to sibling rivalry, which caused Jacob to flee from Esau. It would be years before the two met again, and while Jacob was still afraid that Esau would be mad, it turned out that time healed the wounds, and the two embraced. There's a lot we can learn from this story, from how to parent, or better yet, how not to parent, to sibling rivalry. Parents, don't play favorites, and don't pit one child against the other. And when you think that your kids fight more than any other siblings, just remember some of these Bible stories. Siblings have been fighting since the beginning, and in the end, blood is thicker than water. The story of Isaac's boys also shows us how God is in control, and his plans ultimately went out. Abraham was promised descendants. Isaac was the first, and through him Jacob, who would become the father of 12 tribes of people, and his name would be changed to Israel. God's covenant fulfilled, God's plan realized, God's people established.